Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you break. We've had enough of all the money you make. We've had enough, no more life at stake. We've had enough, this is a proclamation. It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait. Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you were breaking. We had enough of all the money you were making. We had enough, no more life gets taken. We had enough, this is a proclamation. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough, all the money you're making. We've had enough, no more life gets taken. We've had enough, this is the proclamation. We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel?
We've had enough. John Crawford, I know you've heard. We've had enough. Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand. We've had enough. Sean Bell, what the hell? We've had enough. Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said? We've had enough. This is a proclamation.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane, our Monday edition. Monday, we focus on community, on neighborhoods, and I'm pleased to be joined by my constant companions, Diana Hawkins and Andrew Bonhoff from Hawthorne Neighborhood Council. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey Al, how are you today?
Excellent. Been a good weekend so far in terms of weather and just personal, but a disturbing weekend, both here and across the country because of the continuation of violence and mishap and dysfunction. And I'm just wondering how we feel our communities are reacting. What are you hearing in the Hawthorne neighborhood? I'm coming overwhelmed by watching the national news and local news. What are you guys hearing?
Well, I think, Al, for us in Hawthorne, it's kind of like, it's overbearing because we have so much going on and it's not just geared to this one neighborhood. You see where I'm coming from? It's all over. And like you said, it's worldwide. And I know people are just like really puzzled because this is just tragedy everywhere. I mean, every time I hear this song, Enough is Enough, that it is so fitting because we're living this tragedy every day.
Yeah.
I mean, every single day.
And Andrew, you're a Southsider. That was disturbing news about an automotive incident in the Uptown area. What do you know about that, if anything? But what are your gut reactions to it?
I was on the phone with Diana this morning. We were doing our morning, briefing with each other, and then she mentioned something about it, and I pulled it to Star Tribune. And honestly, I haven't even looked into it because I'm just, I think just like our community, you just don't need another thing to sink you. It's hard to know where your leaders are right now. It's also hard to know who is genuinely for the community and for change, and who do we turn to in our times of need. And so I don't know much. I know somebody hit somebody with a car in a protest, and that's horrific enough. I just needed to back away and say I do not need to know the details right now.
I hear you. Well, we've got a couple of our regular political candidates, I believe, in the back room. I see Mickey Moore is here. Mickey, how you doing, man?
Great, Al. Thanks for having me.
And we have some friends from Turning Point here. Liz Reed is here.
Hey, Liz.
How are you?
All right.
Good to see you.
Thank you for your article a few years ago.
You're welcome.
Sure. And we'll be doing more with you. We're here to celebrate you today, though, because you're transitioning out of your full-time role there of leadership at Turning Point. And hopefully in another minute or two, we'll be joined by Angela Reed, who's got an awfully important assignment in furthering advancing leadership. There's Angela. And we're going to be joined by Peter Hayden as well. Hey, Angela, how are you?
I'm doing well, working it out. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. Well, I was just saying to Elizabeth, we want to take extra time today to talk about her and her career and her work at Turning Point. But in general, on Mondays, what we do, Angela, is focus on community, neighborhood organizations. And since the political campaign is wrapping up, we've been inviting candidates for city council and other offices, mayor's office, to come on as often as they are able and are willing, because our objective is to create space in the public narrative for ideas, voices, analyses that come from our community. I don't know if you know Mickey Moore, but he's a candidate for city council in Ward 9. I think the incumbent there is not running again. Let me start with you, Mickey, and talk about what happened with the results of the endorsing convention. Where do things stand in your ward, and maybe a general assessment, if you're able to, about either surprises or not surprises in other wards regarding the DFL endorsement?
Well, the DFL endorsement process had some issues right from the beginning. There was a lot of contention and confusion, and there were some human errors, there were some computer errors, there were some odd situations that came up right from the beginning. And a lot of different groups had started challenging the process going back to almost when the process began. Because what happened was the group that was running the DFL endorsement process had polluted the delegate pool with the various activist organizations that had been operating since last summer. Organizations like the Yes for Minneapolis group, the Our Revolution, the Reclaim Our Streets, and several others. And so rather than having delegate pools that were essentially reflective of the individual wards, some of the wards had delegate pools that were very much not reflective of those wards. And then there's a consequence to that, because now you have an endorsement process that puts forward a candidate that isn't a consequence of the reflection of the ward, but rather a reflection of some of these activist agendas that were put forward. So, for example, in Ward 9, the candidate Jason Chavez received 69% of the delegate pool. Well, Jason Chavez is somebody that supports abolishing the police. 69% of Ward 9 does not support abolishing the police. I can tell you that. It's more like 6 or 9%. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, a disproportionate kind of representation. And I can't speak to every ward, but there were quite a few strange occurrences. 30% of the delegates applied on the last 24 hours. The process was open for months, but in the last 24 hours, a huge swath of new delegates came in. I believe that was Ward 5. So there's a lot of different wards are having problems, and they're handling them in different ways. In some cases, they're challenging the process. In other cases, they're just deciding to kind of ignore the process and just run until November, because you don't have to be an endorsed candidate in this local election. You can run until November if that's your choice. So I didn't receive the DFL endorsement and never expected to, and I'm running until November. I'll be on the ballot in November. So we expect a very different, drastically different result from the general election than we saw in this very limited and non-reflective delegate pool.
And there's not a primary, correct me if I'm correct.
No, because we have ranked choice voting, we don't have a primary system in our local elections.
Okay, so the next step is going to be the general election in November. And as you say, you and probably a number of other candidates are going to be all vying for that seat. And the determinant factor here is ranked choice voting. Is that correct?
That's right. If it comes down to a candidate not getting over 50% on the very first round of voting, then the candidate in the group that has the lowest number of votes drops out, and all of that candidate's second place votes are distributed amongst those people who are left, and they recount and decide, did anybody get over 50%? And then if somebody did, then they're a winner, and if somebody didn't, then they repeat that process, dropping out the lowest number, the candidate who received the lowest number of votes, and dividing their third place votes up amongst those candidates who are left, until somebody gets over 50% of the vote. That's the point behind ranked choice voting, is that you want to have a winner that receives over 50% of the vote.
Great. Okay, look, well, hang loose. We're going to keep the conversation moving today. Diana, did you want to bring something up in particular to this part of the program? You're muted.
No, I just want everybody glad to know that we have our youth, Shemaya. She is now a senior this year, so she has come back to help us again, and she's on the show because she's interested in the topic, and she remembered Liz from when we went down to the event opening down on Broadway.
Wonderful. Shemaya, welcome. Good to see you, and glad to have you here. I hope you're here all the time. We want to encourage the presence and the voices of young people in the community. So thank you. And this is kind of like an open mic opportunity. Jump in wherever you want to. Got a question to raise or a comment to make, observation to make. Your voice is important. Your presence is really appreciated. So thank you so much. So let me go to Turning Point and Elizabeth Reed, Liz Reed, and Angela Reed. And Angela, I want to go to you first and have you talk about, first of all, Turning Point, where we are now, and then you talk about the movement of Liz Reed from her leadership role into, is retirement the right word, Liz?
That's the right word.
That's the right word. So I want to make this kind of just an informal but friendly review of where Turning Point is now. I'm going to ask you to do that, Angela, because you're emerging in an important leadership role in the organization. And so how you see it, sort of what's been handed to you in terms of organization and capacity and vision, and what you have to do, what needs to be done to move both the organization and our community forward. Then I want to go back to Liz and ask Liz to think about where we've come from, because you were there as both as a building block, and you were doing the building as well, building integrity, building service to our community, building accountability, and you've created a great organization and a model that the entire country has looked to for leadership and guidance. So Angela, first of all, describe your role presently at Turning Point and take us to Turning Point 101. Describe the organization.
All right, well, I am Angela Reed. I'm actually the newly appointed Chief Operating Officer starting June 1st. It's a huge honor. I have been actually working directly for Turning Point for about 12 years now as a director of their support services division and their training division. So I'll kind of recap a little bit about Turning Point. for those who are not familiar, and to also give kind of the community an update, because I think a lot of people don't know what we're involved in right now. So Turning Point is a chemical health treatment agency. We are actually the longest running African American treatment center in the country. We really emphasize and advocate for the fact that we are an African American organization. We talk about being culturally specific. And so what that means is that we cater our programming unapologetically to the needs of African Americans locally and nationally. So with that, our real ultimate goal is to make sure we're able to provide support for people at all ranges of addiction, use, and recovery. And so if people need to be really linked with services for up to 5 years, they can go and transition through all 4 of our divisions. So come into treatment. We have 2 low-income apartment buildings. We are one of the few organizations that are actually certified for group residential housing. We have a board and lodge for men, where men, if they still are in that transition time, need to secure housing, need to secure employment, still need some extra support, but they've gone through that initial phase. And even this is open to people in the community as well, but it is sober housing. They can go to Ms. B's house. We have 2 low-income apartments. And then in order to really support what addiction is to, the lives of those impacted and their family members and our community in general, we also have a recovery center. A recovery center is located on Bryant and West Broadway, and that can serve people who are, thinking about quitting, not thinking about quitting, those who need to have a place to connect with positive individuals who are in recovery, also to link up to resources for other Black providers. That really falls underneath our training division, that supporting other providers is a key component of how we function as well. So within those programs, what we have also expanded to include is we are doing HIV testing. We have COVID tests available. We have Narcan distribution. We have a couple of projects on opioid prevention. We are also currently FEMA crisis counseling providers. We are also in the process of developing a African American technical assistance and capacity building consortium with a number of other Black behavioral health organizations. Hopefully that information will be out soon. And then I think it's important to really understand what culture specific is. It's not, there's culture specific organizations, and then there's also the component that we choose to serve African Americans. So we are African American culture specific organization. And so what we do, we have been involved in research. So if any of you guys want to see a research project we did that authenticated our processes and really wrote this methodology, it is to be used by the community. We don't hold on to our intellectual property tightly. Our goal is a community collective overall. So that's why we do have, resources available for community members and providers, because sometimes it's that literature that's just too expensive. And we have self-help books, depression, anxiety, anger, frustration. Sometimes you just might need a stack that we can use to really build the collective. Families can teach within themselves, and providers can teach amongst themselves as well. And so we make sure the programming that we seek has other providers embedded within it who can make sure they support the services that we do and don't backtrack a client if they have a negative experience, and that they're also within the areas of disparities and inequities that are impacting Minnesota. So we're also involved in a lot of listening sessions from the state level, trying to really advocate for a collective impact approach in terms of everything that's going on. And so one of the unique projects that we have, and I really want to share information about this, is we are looking to build our collective as we implement it, is we are part of an overdose fatality review team funded by the Minnesota Department of Health. And we are actually the first culturally specific African American overdose fatality review team certified in the country. And so what that means is if you have people who have actively overdosed, we find people in the community who have died of an overdose, we evaluate their life. We get access to some of their prime systems, medical records, criminal health, criminal justice records, get a whole view of their life and really write up a report on where gaps and opportunities were missed that could have impacted this person's addiction. And so that's one where I really do need to expand my reach. I'm kind of a homebody in my little bubble. I'm expanding more. They know me. I'm always in these walls. So looking for, a lot of engagement, and within my role, just kind of really making us, sail through and engaging a lot to see where we can increase our real impact with the community. One thing that makes Turning Point unique is that we've been around for over 40 years. And so we had that historical knowledge of what has kind of gotten us here. And we know that there's a lot of good information that we've been studied here for years. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of information that really predicted where we would be where we're at. Mm-hmm. And kind of making sure that we're that connector to focus, really on the needs of the community and to engage. And really my goal as COO now, because it is just to really maintain the legacy, to be a reflection of the legacy, to make sure that, I keep a vision and keep moving to get, us to another 40 years. There's very often that someone in their 40s gets appointed an organization that's already been around for 46 years. I'm from Minneapolis, so I'm very familiar with it. So with me, it's just about really maintaining the legacy, maintaining what it means to be culture specific, having the support that it needs to be an organization as Behavioral Health that advocates for being African American, North Minneapolis African American, Minnesota African American, and just make sure that I'm able to carry on everything to the quality that it's already been done.
Diana, a question or comment? You have something you want to bring in, Diana? Did you have a question or comment, Diana?
I just want to say, Angela, I know you have some big shoes to fill, but we know that you can do it. And so we're all here for you. So just let us know how we can help you.
Thank you. And also let us know how we can help you. I think that's the area sometimes, because we're also a service provider, we always feel like there's more we want to do. Mm-hmm. And just to get out there now while we have this platform to let everyone else out there know that Turning Point is here advocating for everybody. So the thing about it is, if we can't do something, we have no problem saying no. But if we can do something, we are going to try to do something. So as things goes by, keep us in mind too. Just know we're here.
Well, let me switch to Elizabeth Reed. And Liz, again, thank you. I'm acknowledging and saluting you on behalf of Insight News, McFarlane Media, on behalf of the entire community, and particularly the Northside community, and particularly the African American, the Black community. I think you and the organization have been pioneers, waymakers, creating a new awareness, a new understanding when the hostile environment was filled with naysayers questioning why you wanted to do this work. And the premise was that, Black people don't have any agency, don't have any capacity to solve a problem better than white people do. They didn't say it that way. I'm saying it as the journalist and as the communicator and the observer. The premise was that addressing these issues like chemical dependency was a universal one that didn't really care about color or culture. And that being the case, Hazleton or Eden House or Alcoholics Anonymous or any other of the established white agencies would be able to resolve or support and assist any individual, be that person Black, white, Asian, Native, or whatever. But you have, and we have discovered that premise was faulty, that the premise itself was a reflection of the arrogance of this notion of a white or colonial supremacy, where people felt that if it wasn't their idea, it didn't exist, or they felt that creation itself was their idea, right? And so our thoughts and our determination to be our own healers didn't matter. And in fact, when we insisted on being the captains of our ship, they really pushed back all day and all night. But Turning Point was one of the organizations that was able to push through, to emerge, to rise, and to sail, I think, gallantly into a direction of agency and efficacy for our people. So Liz, talk about how long you were at Turning Point and just sort of take off from where I set up there, the vision and the work, the struggle, and what brought you to where you are today as a veritable institution and role model for institutions in the Black community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I want to start off with I've been at Turning Point for a little over 20 years. And so it's been my baby just as well as Peter's. And one of the first things I realized, because I had came from corporate America, and I had worked there for almost 30 years. And I thought, as I looked towards my future, that I had a lot that I could contribute to nonprofits, the nonprofit area, because sometimes you're missing that business element that makes a nonprofit successful. And so when I came in, it was all about the idea, like Al said, no, none of them could understand why we needed anything special, why we needed any services that were different from the 12 steps. And the fact that the 12 steps have been proven to be effective for years, and that should be good enough for you. Not taking into consideration all the trauma and everything else that we went through, which is what they commonly do a lot of time, is just disregard that and get over that, and we're not going to do anything special. So it probably took us a lot of years to finally get them to understand that you have to bring the cultural component into all the programming. The 12 steps was designed by older white men. I mean, that's how the 12 steps got established. And so we had to fight all along because they never saw the value of that. They never saw the value of specialized treatment for us. I think that within the last 5 or 6 years, they finally realized how important the cultural piece is, and not just in treatment. And I think they put us also in a category that I had to change, where we were a treatment center. What they didn't understand, we provided treatment, we provided housing, we provided, I mean, we have a whole series of different services that we provide to people, and we're never really recognized for those. And so one of the things that I think that I brought was that business sense, and the fact that you got to look at it from several perspectives as a nonprofit. You got to look for fee for services, because that's going to be all based off of how many people you have in your program. But you also have to have grants, because then grants will supplement. If your programming's low, you've got your grants. And I think that initially we weren't thinking like that. We weren't thinking out of the box and doing those things. And so I really myself feel that one of my legacies is the DRH housing, and being able to, for years, we had tried to get into DRH housing. And I always remember a conversation I had with, at that time, it was Commissioner Dorfman. And I think all of you remember Commissioner Dorfman. And she said to me, because he tried to avoid saying, do this for the African Americans. I mean, you just have a tendency to try to back off. And then she said, you know what? We will make exceptions if you just make sure that this is for African Americans. And I'll never forget that. State what you are, she said. And that took me to a whole different level, because one side saying, well, we're not going to do anything special for you, and somebody else is saying, no, identify your needs, identify for what you need. And that clicked for me. And so they actually opened up the statute to allow Turning Point to be part of the general housing. And that hadn't been done in 20 years. And because they had that select group that had all the DRH housing, so it was all those little pieces that we had to put together that brought us here. I mean, treatment is one portion of what Turning Point does, but I think so many are now realizing that's just a little piece. And I am so proud of how we have grown in the last 20 years. I mean, we've grown, and we went from starving to being stable to growth. And everybody needs to look at it from that category. Survival, growth. Survival, growth. That's all right. I mean, that's how you, it's as simple as that. And so it's been an honor for me. And Diana, you're from Des Moines, right? You're not the Diana from Des Moines?
No, I'm from Pittsburgh, remember?
Oh, it's Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
You know, Al, I just gotta say, I met Liz about 20 years ago when you and myself and Dr. Hayden served on the Urban League. And
yeah.
Peter would always tell me about this little dynamite woman. And when I first met Liz, Al, it was like, this woman can't do all of that. When I got to know Liz and the knowledge that she has and the knowledge that she has brought to Turning Point, she is really leaving a legacy. So I just want to commend you. When I grow up, I want to be like you, Liz.
Ooh. Thank you. So
But can I
that's
say
kind of,
that?
I've been on a journey. It's been a beautiful journey. And I almost feel like, you know, Turning Point was my child, and now they can go on their merry way. And I've given them the foundation now to be able to be self-sufficient and just continue to grow. And so that's how I feel. And I feel it's been a wonderful 20 years, and I'm ready to travel because it's nonprofit work is the hardest work in the world. I thought I could retire, come to nonprofit, and just kind of lay back and give to the community because my whole purpose was to give to the community. But I thought I would be able to do it at a nice, even pace and still do this. Well, that's, you all know that's not true in the nonprofit because you work harder than I've ever worked in my life. So it's been such an honor to be here. And I think I have left a little bit of a mark, and I'm just proud of it. And I'm very glad that Peter decided to have Angela take over. And I thought to myself, well, Peter, you think you slick? You just want two people. You got me and her. So he's slick. He knew what he was doing. So I just want to thank the community because I've grown so much just knowing all the organizations, and it's just been an honor to me. It's just been an honor. So.
Well, I see Dr. Peter Hayden is joined, but before I ask him to jump in here, you know, I just want to give my sort of a testimony and an impression I'll share. And when I think of you, Liz, what I think of first and foremost is the ultimate professional. And every encounter I've had with you representing Turning Point and all the things that Turning Point does in the community have been the model, the standard, the gold standard of professionalism. And so you never dropped the ball. You never moved away from the standard of excellence. And you've set a very high bar, but you said it like, it's just like breathing. It's like what you do. It's who you are. So I just want to compliment you and compliment you in a public way to say that that attitude and that intensity, that integrity, that genius that you bring to it is really something that all of us in community can both recognize and embrace and imitate. So again, kudos to you and thanks to you on behalf of myself and the McFarlanes and Insight News and McFarlane Media. But I take the liberty to speak on behalf of the entire community. And I thank you, Elizabeth Reed, on behalf of Minnesota, on behalf of Minneapolis, on behalf of North Minneapolis, and on behalf of Black people and people of color. I thank you so much. Peter Hayden, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm sitting back just listening. You had me in the locker room for a minute, so Liz couldn't see me or anybody could see me, and that's when you know how a person feels about you. You know what I'm saying? And thank you so much for Liz for. I don't know what the question is, Al, but I can jump in if I may.
Yeah, please.
Liz Reed, I've known Liz for a while, known her husband, and I remember Angela she had some birthday, 3 years old, 4 years old, or something, and she was just running around organizing her little birthday party down at some hotel and what have you. And I watched Liz at that particular time as she raised her kids, because I know her other kids too. And when you just hit on a note, Al, that says she's been a professional all her life, and even with her children, she was a professional. That not stern and things of this nature, but that's something that I found out. And I met Miss B, her mom, one time at the Drake Relays, and I found out that she was carrying forth her mom's will. And so when I sat down with Liz and said, Liz, I need your help, it's just not going to work. I had, let me just say this. I want all of y'all to hear. One of the reasons Liz came to Turning Point was because she was a woman. I had 3 men before Liz working with me, and we didn't work out. And it wasn't because we didn't like each other, but just, and I'll tell the fellas that I see right here, if you're going to have a strong support, get you a woman who's smart. I'm telling you, because everything Liz has said and not said in terms of carrying Turning Point to the next level is because she was a woman. I'm telling you, because what men do is we, first of all, get a man like ourselves, and secondly, we get pissed off at each other. Hear me clearly. We get pissed off at each other, and then everything goes to pot. When Liz, whatever Liz has said to me, we've sat back and figured it out for 21 years. And what I can tell you, Turning Point is here today because of Liz, and Liz is the woman. That's the reason that we took Angela and put her in position, because I was not going to go and get another man. I know better. And so I have a young lady who can be around for another 20, 30 years and even go past what Liz has brought to the table. And I want to say that again, Al, so Angela can hear what the position is, and she will carry it forth. Turning Point is here to stay. We're not here to be, when people start talking about the legacy and they talk about Phyllis Wheatley and all these other programs that they talk about, well, you remember, it's the same thing with Al. You got your daughter set up. Mm-hmm. You understand? Because we're talking about a legacy. Donna and I became tight friends. You know, I mean, and she's another Liz type woman. I mean, if we're going to make it last, y'all, we've got to understand we can't just, I don't want to say the Bible, but Brenda, I just want to say, it is not always the man that leads the household. You know, the Bible talks about certain kinds of things, but I heard a preacher say this very clear, that a woman doesn't walk behind you or in front of you. You get a woman to walk beside you. Then she sometimes can lead you and be okay with it. So I appreciate you, Al, for giving me a position as you have all the time. And I appreciate the fact that I don't want to hear no one say, well, what's going to happen to Turning Point now that Liz is gone? We don't play that. Turning Point's going to go further because Angela is here.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? Al is here. Diana is here. All of them, because of the love that y'all have for Liz, you're not going to now say those kinds of things. You're going to say, I know Turning Point's going to the next level. Lastly, men, I want y'all to know this. Many of the programs that we have is because Liz was a woman. She could sit and talk to other women. There are some times that you got to stand back and let that woman lead. That's why Dorfman said, oh, let's do ABC. She wasn't going to say that to me. Now, am I Al to get mad and call them a bunch of names and call them racist and feminists and all this going on? If it's going to get the work done for the people that we deal with at Turning Point, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Liz.
Okay.
Well, this is so cool. It's really great. And, I think what we're doing is what we ought to do all the time is acknowledge each other, acknowledge our legacy, our history, and talk about the continuity, how that movement is simply that. It's movement inside, outside, but it's a chain. It's a river that's unending. And this work is work that, in a sense, one could say has no beginning and has no end. This is simply about being in the middle and operating from the middle outwards, going, the middle that we're in right now represents all that's happened before and all that will happen in the future. Being here at this place is what it's about. And the evidence of it is Angela and Elizabeth. The evidence of it is Diana and Shamala, right? That's why this is a special moment, because we're looking at bloodlines here and family lines and continuity and this ability and this desire for elders to impart their vision, their version, right, and their knowledge, but also the willingness and the enthusiasm which young people take up the mantle and press forward and move forward. And that's what we're doing. And that's also true of the conversation we're having, Peter Hayden, with our political friends as well. And we have always on Mondays taken time to talk both about community and about politics. And before you got on, I was asking Mickey Moore about what happened over in Ninth Ward in general, a general synopsis of the endorsing conventions that were held virtually this year for the DFL, that there are some people happy, some people unhappy with it. And I looked at an article in the paper a few days ago, and it kind of listed which candidacies earned endorsements and which ones did not. But the operative thing here is that everybody, I think, is choosing to go forward to the general. Let me ask Tekin, I'll say it right. Tekin, tell me which is
Tekin.
Okay, Tekin Zia Aida, to talk about what happened over in your ward. You're a candidate for city council in 7th Ward.
In the 7th Ward, it's an uphill battle. Both I and the other challenger are moving forward. I don't know what his ideas are, but for me, the process was difficult. It was untested waters. There were a lot of problems. I never even got my postcard, ever. To say that I was a delegate or anything. People who were supposed to be able to vote, all of a sudden were not, registered to do so. So it was problematic. At the same time, I know the people who worked and put it together, and I know they worked very hard. So I am refraining from, pointing fingers or, making any type of accusations. I will say this, the incumbent received the endorsement in Ward 7, and without a shadow of a doubt, I will say that she does not share my democratic farmer labor values. And so I am going to move forward. I kind of even pulled away. Dante Wright's killing kind of put the kibosh on my campaigning during that point. I had to step back for about 2-3 weeks and just reevaluate my message and just even my purpose. And so I am just preparing to take it to the streets and to the people. I did want to say to the center point, or I can't remember, to the Reeds, that cultural competency.
Turning point.
Thank you, Senator. Turning point. That cultural competency piece when it comes to recovery is unquantifiable. The importance. I am someone who has accessed those services in the past, and one of the things that I realized quickly was that although I just dived in and I got what I needed, it was not an environment that would be welcoming to the average person of color, definitely the average Black person. The service center that I went to. And I remember as I left, before I left, I spoke to the administrators and I said, could you put up pictures of Black people? I mean, just the simplest thing. When you walk into this facility, can I see myself reflected? And they're like, oh yeah, Declan, we're gonna do that. And I've talked to people who have gone to that facility since, and they haven't changed anything. And I don't know if you know this, but within the African American LGBTQA plus community, drugs and alcohol is a crisis. Red flags abound, and I don't know what your program offers that particular community inside of the ADOS or Black community, but I can tell you, if you don't already know, which I have a feeling you do, in the Twin Cities, drug and alcohol addiction crisis is affecting Black and brown people, specifically in the LGBTQA community at, I mean, something beyond crisis level. And that cultural bit, that feeling of being welcomed and seen, I'm not sure if we as a people are receiving that fully in the state of Minnesota. So as someone who's been there and done that, I would love, and who is running for public office, I would love to meet with you and kind of dive in and talk and seeing how the city can support you in that work.
And let me ask Mickey Moore to respond the same way, because this is a critical issue for our community, for all communities. That's the question of sobriety, the question of access, the question of self-worth, self-esteem, the question of dignity. And so many of those things in compounding ways are crushed and stripped. And people are increasingly pressurized, traumatized. And so as a person seeking public office, how do you prioritize using the levers of the public, the purse of the public, to engage, address, support solutions that arise from within the community, enabling our people to be our healers? What do you think, Mickey Moore?
Well, I'm not sure if Dr. Hayden realizes, but he has a very strong advocate in our 9th Ward in Divine Muhammad, who is constantly on me about how to help Turning Point very specifically. So you don't have to come out yourself. You've got Divine over there who is on a regular trying to reach out to increase the resources, increase city involvement, level the playing field in some cases. He's told me some things that I wouldn't know without being able to speak on a in-depth basis with somebody who really has his fingers in this particular pie. I wouldn't know about the unlevel playing field that you guys are dealing with in terms of the justice system and how they apply their various resources and how the different operational algorithms are turned out for you or in some cases against you. So this is the kind of issue that it really takes expertise in the field. This isn't the kind of thing where, politicians love to pretend to be experts.
Yeah.
And I'm always happy to tell people when I'm not an expert. And I am not an expert in rehabilitation and drug recovery and drug addiction. That is not an area where I am an expert. And that's why it's so important to partner and to develop real collaborations with the people who know. Okay, Divine, with the people who know what they're talking about and absolutely have the public's best interest in heart and aren't approaching it from a partisan political agenda standpoint, who are only coming at it the way Elizabeth Reed so eloquently explained, from a public interest point of view. So we really need to make these issues priorities and then put into a position of authority and power those people who can implement meaningful change and intelligent policy, so that our city isn't operating on a political agenda as it relates to issues like drug rehabilitation, but on a pragmatic agenda and a methodology that moves towards solving problems. And that's going to require a big change, because that's not the way the city, and everybody that's here that is an expert will tell you, how many times has the city brought you in to develop city policy? It never happens. It rarely happens. It doesn't happen enough.
But it's an equity issue.
The way our city operates, so that we prioritize using the experts that we have. We just heard how these people are the absolute experts in the country on this issue. So we need to employ them, not on a salary basis, but use their talents and their expertise to develop intelligent policy that makes sense for our city.
Because it's an equity issue. It's a human rights issue, like education, housing, access to jobs, access to healthcare, drug and alcohol treatment. All of these areas are areas where we see African Americans specifically, right, being left out of the benefits that we see other members of our community able to receive. And so I agree with that.
I would like to take a second to respond a little bit to your comment, and I probably not going to say it right either, but hopefully we'll meet again, Tiken, and you will train me on how to say this correctly. Yes. But I thought it was really important that you brought up some of the issues with the LGBTQ community. We actually do have some programs trying to reach that community more. Turning Point was actually one of the first organizations to take on HIV case management back in the 80s. Okay. And so we're actually one of the longest running programs that focus on HIV, Black LGBTQ issues through HIV testing. So that is one issue that I want to talk with you about. But I think one thing that's important for people, because my first field is education. My background is research. I got my guy popping his head in since you brought his name up. I thought it was funny, but my first field is education, early childhood education. My field of study is human development and why we progress. And there is a rationale that got us as a people, the community, to the state that it's in. And so it's important that when we talk about culture specific, that it's about a methodology that is customized. We need culture specific information, access, services, resources in education, criminal justice, community development, all different areas until we get ourselves to the point where we're out of these disparities. We really have to look at everything and understand that right now we are in a state of emergency. I would have thought COVID would have put more emphasis on that, because no matter what race and culture you're in, you are impacted by the infrastructure that wasn't set up correctly. But we have to work together and what we need to do to kind of get out of it. And so I just wanted you to say that I appreciate you bringing up the concerns of the LGBTQ community, and to know that I am 100% would love to talk with you, because I'm looking for more connections in that area as well. And that, we're here to advocate for all issues, big and small, even ones that are not necessarily culture specific. We want to impact the general population in Minneapolis too. So we're kind of there.
There's a real place for you. There's a real place for you, as Mickey was saying, in the municipal, in the governing conversation. You know what I mean? We need you to be there, because the city is passing policies without actually knowing the real life circumstances. You know, for instance, even on sex work, I like the idea of decriminalizing it. But if you're just going to do that, that's a very racist and elitist thing, because you're not backing it up with the education, the housing, the healthcare, the jobs. And that same thing with drug and alcohol. You know, George Floyd, they tried to criminalize him with you know, saying he was a drug addict. You know, that again goes right back to, you know, these services that Minnesota is not doing a good enough job getting out to all people, regardless of your race or even your religious ideology.
One of the things that I'm going to be reaching out to Tekken about as well, Angela, is Tekken is from Colombia, and so is Afro-Latino, right? And there's a whole world of African people here who speak Spanish, who are from the Caribbean, from Central America, from South America, and they are kind of invisible in the Black community because we don't know that there are more of us Africans in the Caribbean and South America than there are of us in North America. We don't know that. It's a secret. But the majority of us who came from Africa still remain in South America and in the Caribbean. That's one thing. And two, we also don't know what experiences they are having within the generalized Latino culture. That the white Latinos, and this is a gross generalization, so take it like that, often mirror colonialist, imperialist, supremacist mentality. So this is a group that's doubly impacted, and we have an obligation. So I'll be reaching out to Tekken to come up with what we've been working on for years, but a publication that we do call Afrodescendientes. It'll be a combination Spanish language, English language, featuring the African presence in the world. Now you had
and even the East African community is facing a drug crisis as well. So it's everywhere.
You had a colleague, Angela. I wanted to bring him on camera if he's still there.
He ran. We're starting a group at 2:00. He ran to make sure they're straight. But I wanted to, have him pop his head in because I knew he was just right there when
he comes back.
Mr. Moore brought him in. I said, my divine. He's actually on my division that I just that I used to manage as one of our recovery coaches. Mm-hmm. And so he's always really working for advocating. So it was a nice, good surprise to hear his name brought up, and I appreciate that. And I do appreciate all the work he does.
If I can jump in just real quick, Al.
Before you do, Dr. Hayden, let me say, I want to comment on something Angela said, and that is about her work as a researcher. I think research and taking the high ground as authorities in research is what you represent and what you're doing. And our community has been victimized by research that was mal-informed and mal-intentioned. Research data used to prove our unworthiness, our inhumanity, our dysfunction, etc. And so if you go in with an hypothesis that says that Black life doesn't matter, everything you demonstrate and come up with is going to prove that hypothesis, right? And until we are in a position to understand the use of and the ability to quantify incidences and things and count the world with a different measure, we will continue to be losing. And so I applaud you because you are telling our people what data utilization is, what research is all about, and you're demonstrating that we can bring together an analysis of what exists. An analysis of what exists that properly points out the flaws of historical strategies and that points to solutions that are organic, that are universal, that are global, and that are humane. So Dr. Hayden, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it all. You just said the reason Angela is in the position that she's in. Because if I was going to bring someone in like me or even like Liz, we wouldn't go where we're going. This young lady is unbelievable. But I was also going to say not only the legacy of Liz and Angela, but Divine's father was the first counselor when I opened Turning Point up. His uncle, excuse me, his uncle. You see, and we've got to think like that. We get so confused with we can't do this. You know, when no, we can do it. It's our program. You know, and why do you keep going to New York and California? Liz and I were talking, and bringing somebody else in to run Turning Point or to do all these things when you got it right here, homegrown. So
Can I just jump in? Same thing with safety. Same thing with our local public safety.
Yeah, there you go. And so, Mickey, I mean, you know, just hang in there. Anything, and I tell people this all the time, anything the Turning Point can do to help you in where you're going, I'm not going to get into politics, but wherever you're going, we're there for you.
Let me close with this. We're out of time, but Brenda and I have often brought up you, Dr. Hayden, remembering the profundity of a comment you made in one of our earlier interviews. And you said, you know, and I'm going to throw it out, but you can say it the way you said it. What is it about a Black person loving himself, herself, that makes a white person so fearful? What did you say? Remember that? You remember telling us that?
I talked about inferiority versus superiority, and that we tend to see white folks always disliking us, although they spend thousands of dollars to get their lips big like us, their big booty big like us, their sun tanning and all those kinds of things. And then on top of that, they say they are superior.
Oh dear.
And it's impossible to want everything I have and then feel that you're superior, and you use that to make me feel inferior.
What a revelation. Look, we're out of time. This is a great way to end the program. I want to thank everybody for being here and again, celebrate Liz Reed on her career of public service in corporate and in Turning Point. Thank you. We're applauding you, Elizabeth Reed. Angela, congratulations. And we applaud you for the leadership that you're bringing. Shamia, is it Shamia? Shamila?
Shamaya?
It's Shamaya.
Shamaya. Okay. I just want to say I really am glad that your spirit and your voice and your presence is in this room. And you represent the sacred trust. Your being here is divine. And we want to just encourage you just for the intensity, the attention that you're providing in this conversation, and know that everybody here is totally committed to you, your success, your future, and we're counting on you to create a world in which our people win. And our people winning doesn't mean anybody else has to lose. We're going to redefine what winning is, where everybody can win. And it's your group that's going to make it happen. Brenda, thank you. Andrew, thank you. Diana, Brother Tekin, and Dr. Hayden. Liz, see everybody later. I'm Al McFarlane. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.